Hey friends, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. So as usual, let's get right into today's Reddit posts. Steal a trailer? Don't be stupid and sell it online. The story happened over 20 years ago when the internet was a newish thing and people weren't quite so savvy. My then boss was heavily involved in motorsports, and when you have competition vehicles, you need a large trailer to take them to events. He had a home-built trailer that was reasonably unique and identifiable, which he stored it outside his house. Then one day he found that it had been stolen during the night. So he did the normal thing of filing a police report, and after being angry, moving on and accepting it was probably gone for good. Except that he also kept an eye on TradeMe, our local eBay equivalent, on the off chance the thief was stupid enough to list it there for sale. A couple of weeks later, what should pop up in the trailer's for sale listings? His car trailer. Repainted but still identifiable as his, right down to still having the original color paint visible around the coupling. The question was how to get it back. Off my boss went back to the police, who said, "Leave it with us, TradeMe will have to hand over his details." Except that TradeMe said no, that they only had his username and email address. So the police decided that the next best way to get the seller's details was to win the auction. An account was set up with TradeMe, bids were placed, and they led the bidding up until an hour before the auction closed. Remember I said this guy was stupid for selling stolen goods online? Perhaps he wasn't quite as dumb as I thought, as he smelled a rat and blocked the police account from the auction. And my boss couldn't bid on it as his location would be a dead giveaway. But my TradeMe account had a history on it of buying motorsport-related items, and so it would be natural for me to also buy a car trailer. So I placed a bid and won the auction. I'm told that when my boss contacted the police after the auction, they were pretty glum and didn't know how they were going to identify the seller or auction winner, until my boss told them it was me who won the auction. I then made contact with the seller, managed to get him to agree to payment in cash, and to give me a pickup address and time for the next day. Of course, it was the police who went to collect the trailer at the agreed time on my behalf. And a few hours later, the trailer was returned to my boss, in a better condition than it was when it was taken. And the police were able to arrest not just the seller, but also an accomplice, and recovered a number of other stolen items from the property into the bargain. Don't touch anything electrical if you're not an electrician. Years back, I used to work on the melt deck at a foundry in the area. It was a union job, so everyone had their own roles to do. I was in melting, and one of our jobs was to melt the iron for another department to pour into the molds. Every so often, we would trip a breaker on one of the furnaces and had to call an electrician to come up to the melt deck to fix it. The panels for the furnaces opened up, and the electricians would just flip a switch and it'd be fixed. The problem was, sometimes it would take 20+ minutes for an electrician to show up and fix it. Waiting a few minutes wasn't much of a big deal, but when it would be over 30 minutes, it would start cutting into our pay, since we got paid based on the tonnage melted, and when we couldn't melt iron, no money. Eventually our ATF, assistant to the foreman, got sick of it, and would open the panel and flip the switch himself so we could keep going. The electricians found out what we were doing and had a meltdown, no pun intended, and told us we weren't allowed to do that and not to touch anything electrical if we weren't an electrician. Some words were had and we agreed, only for the electricians to go right back to taking forever responding to our calls. Everyone on the melt deck decided that anything electrical was out of our pay grade. We then proceeded to call electricians up to the melt deck to plug in and unplug our phone chargers, stating it's electrical, I can't touch it. Of course, we wouldn't tell them that over the radio, just that we need an electrician on the melt deck for an electrical issue. They didn't find it as funny as we did, and eventually we all agreed to stop calling them for our phones, and their response time significantly improved. And someone in the comments has something similar to this as well. I worked in a quality control laboratory doing destructive testing on fiberglass and carbon fiber. A key part of the job was to make panels of the material and cut our samples on a CNC router. Once every 4 months, the CNC router would blow a fuse in its plug. A simple removal of a single screw and the fuse could be replaced. We did it ourselves and took 2 to 3 minutes to do. Our new site manager decided we are not allowed to do it anymore and we needed the electrician to do it. Next time it popped, we were told for an emergency call out, it would be hundreds of pounds plus labor. The electrician was a high-voltage specialist, which we had a contract with due to other equipment, so his emergency fees covered loss of potential big money from other jobs. Site manager decided he wasn't paying that for changing a fuse, so he booked an appointment. The whole laboratory grounded to a halt for 2 weeks for an electrician to charge around £100 to change a fuse, call-out fee and an hour's labor. Electrician was mind-blown how they would call him for a simple job that anyone can do, and due to the CNC router running overtime to catch up on the backlog, he was called again in less than 3 months and got the emergency call-out fee as we were still catching up from last time. My guy got paid over £600 for 6 minutes work. Wish I was paid so well. Reported lady for dog inside store, which led to her arrest. Hi, so this happened yesterday at Target. I was going there to buy speakers. I knew ahead of time I'd be spending a lot of time in the store testing speakers. About a couple minutes into this, though, a woman walks into the aisle with her large dog. The dog immediately strained on the leash to try to sniff me, and the lady just kept browsing. I know service dogs are trained not to lunge or interact with strangers, so I doubted that it was a service dog. It also had a vest, but it was unmarked. I decided to speak up. Something like, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but do you have your service animal papers on you?" She looked surprised, but just laughed and said, "Oh, don't worry, she's really friendly." I stood my ground and said, "I understand that, but that's not really what I asked. Your dog really needs to be a service animal or it can't be in the store, even if it's friendly, so..." She immediately looked angry, like complete 180 to her previous demeanor, and said, "Well, it's none of your f***ing business, so..." At this point, I was really uncomfortable, so I walked over to the kiosk in the electronics area to tell a worker that there was a lady with a non-service dog. She must have heard me as she started walking towards us and stating loudly, "Hey, why don't you just mind your own f***ing business and leave me alone?" The workers immediately stood in between us and told her that she needs to leave. The lady just said whatever and threw in another "hope you're happy" as she was being escorted. At this point, I tried to go back to speaker shopping, but was visibly shaken. After 10 to 20 minutes, I realized I couldn't focus, was really anxious, and decided that I should just go home. When I was leaving, there was a big crowd by the doors, and I saw the lady on the ground in cuffs and police around. I was really shocked because I don't think what she did was something she could be arrested over, so I asked a bystander what happened. He told me she was being walked out, but as she got to the entrance, she started yelling at the worker about her dog being a service animal but refusing to provide proof. She got more and more agitated and ended up throwing something at the girl. Police were called, and when they showed up, she was still aggressive to the police, yelling back at them. Eventually, she shoved an officer, and as soon as that happened, she got pinned to the ground, plus handcuffed. I was really shocked at the progression of events. I hurried home, but ever since have been feeling so guilty and awful about it. If I knew she would be arrested, I would have went somewhere else in the store and waited for her to leave, or just went home. I feel like an asshole because I know most people would just ignore it. However, I have trauma in the past being raised in a house with 2 large, untrained dogs that would knock me and my sisters over, chase, and bite us, and I thought I could try standing up for myself. However, I feel awful that she was arrested, and I'm also worried that the dog, who did nothing wrong, will be put in the shelter since its owner was arrested. You want me to review every single candidate? You got it, babe. This is the best time that my warnings went unheeded and made the client regret ever asking. I worked in recruitment for 9 years, and a few years back I had a new client, hiring manager, and she didn't like abiding by the rules set up for the recruitment team. For one thing, we review the applicants, interview the best qualified candidates, and then submitted them to the hiring manager for consideration. Well, this hiring manager couldn't understand why we only sent over 3 candidates in a week. Honestly, she's lucky, as some positions did not garner that many applicants. I explained that we submit 3 candidates for every 1 position available. This ensures that the hiring manager's time was considered when scheduling next step interviews. This wasn't just the standard I set, it was approved by her company's TA bosses, and frankly was standard at another place I used to work as well. The hiring manager says, "That is absurd. I want to review all of the candidates so I can tell you whom to pre-screen, and then you schedule their interview with me based on my availability." And I say, but ma'am, you have almost 100 applicants that met your minimum qualifications. I don't think you really want to devote that much time to reviewing all of these resumes, and honestly, some of them were not great. Are you not listening? Send them all over to me and I'll take care of it. Yes, ma'am, you got it. I'll send those over right away. I wrote an email to the hiring manager immediately after the call, restating the topics discussed by phone and asked again if she was certain she wanted all of the candidates sent to her. She confirmed. I complied and forwarded to my boss with an explanation that she will take care of reviewing all applicants, and my numbers were going to be skewed for the month. I did as requested, selecting nearly 100 candidates in the system and moved them to the hiring manager review. Now, what this did was send individual emails for each candidate as an update to the hiring manager, and it would ping her email every 3 days that they weren't reviewed. I smirked, knowing what was about to happen and my rear was going to get chewed out in about a week, but it felt really good because I knew I was right. 2 days later, my boss calls and says he got an irritating phone call from this hiring manager who said she never requested this. To which they responded with the information detailed in my email. She was speechless. He let her know that I would go back into the system and back up the candidate process, so it would be taken out of her to-do list, and I would continue to send over candidates that were the best fit for the role, as described in our processes. I never received pushback from that hiring manager ever again. Alright guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed and subscribe for more. So take care, I'll see you all next time.